Hey, what's up? I hope everyone's having a great Monday. Regardless if you're working at school, if you're raising your kids, or if you're having a day off like me, then pretty much I wanted to make this video and upload it in reference of what's been going on with the Orlando shooting incidents. And even though it's unfortunate, and I know people are in a panic or they're frustrated and they're mad, it doesn't excuse how people have been communicating with each other off or on the net. And you need to understand that when I'm making this video, this is not me in favor of weapons, and this is not me in favor of not having weapons. I'm totally neutral. So before you jump into any conclusions, this is neither to promote or to have weapons. Also, not to bash people, because I have um, this video clip that I'm going to play in the background to show to anti-gun activists and also pro-activists if we can have like a civilized conversation amongst each other about what's more rational. Because regardless if you feel like if it's right or wrong, you need to understand that as much as I wish that we can have every single weapon from nuclear weapons to like typical like dangerous appliances that we can have in our houses or outside of the outside in the streets, anything could be turned into a weapon. Anything. And you know why? Because human beings have the potential to be violent, regardless if it's been legally purchased through some sort of like tighter background check or a better psychological evaluation. There's still a black market out there, so it pretty much limits normal law-abiding citizens who sometimes may go unstable, just like that situation with Orlando. The person that shot 50 people at a club in Orlando called Club Pulse legally purchased the assault rifle. So I can get your drift. The people that are like anti-weapons, um, that if we start banning assault rifles or anything remotely as dangerous as that, then it'll make it might make it less likely for people to start doing like you know public shootings like that. And but unfortunately that isn't the case, because this video behind me pretty much proves that regardless if the man was Muslim, if he had like religion, or he was citing his hatred towards gay people, regardless of sexual preference, um, that it didn't matter if this was a recent massacre or a past massacre. A massacre is still a massacre. People still fucking die. So when I play this video clip around 4 to 5 minutes, I'll probably stop around maybe 8 minutes. Then I'm gonna drop my conclusion of something that should be spoken more rationally, because the people who are anti-guns need to stop fucking belittling people who want to arm themselves with a much powerful weapon. Because sometimes a Beretta or a 5.7 or any type of magazine ain't gonna cut it against criminals that can obtain any fucking illegal firearm without background checks, without psychological evaluations. Even if you put strict laws that if they get caught, you know, with something that bad and they get execution or they get 25 to forever, most of those cases of people getting injured or killed by criminals will still fucking happen regardless if they get punished. So I'm gonna play this video clip, and then I'm gonna drop some conclusion opinions that we should all be sharing, and we should stop mocking each other. You gotta stop saying that assault rifles are meant for idiots or for gun fetishes that want to build a collection, that just do it for hunting. How idiotic! Oh, like their butt hurt. Like what the fuck? Like seriously, that's not. You're not being a mature adult about this just because you oppose other people for wanting to defend themselves. And for the last time, I don't own a firearm. I'm taking a gamble because I'm not comfortable with it. So I'm gonna play this video clip, and then let's come to a reasonable conclusion that's rational, that has nothing to do with your deep gut feeling. What's rational? All right. I'm gonna ask you a serious question, and then you need to start like start questioning your perspectives. Okay. And we should stop lying to ourselves. We're not living in a safe world, regardless if the person was a Muslim or a criminal, or if someone is in the army or they're a cop. So I'm gonna play this clip.
Before the tanks in Tiananmen, before the tragedy in Tehran, students in the USA spoke out and were killed in Kent State, Ohio. It is 1970. The American war in Southeast Asia is spreading from Vietnam to Cambodia.
The areas in which these attacks will be launched are completely occupied and controlled by North Vietnamese forces. Our purpose is not to occupy the areas.
So we had those two reasons to protest, the invasion of Cambodia and the invasion of our campus by the National Guard.
I had a pretty big philosophy about the use of tear gas. I don't know how many rounds we fired, somewhere between 200 and 400 rounds that day.
Here were kids who had been brought up to believe that America was different because that we had freedom of speech.
Students did not think it conceivable that the rifles that the guardsmen were carrying had bullets in them.
And when they turned and opened fire, and I said to myself, oh my God, they're going to shoot.
13 seconds, some 60 bullets, 4 dead in Ohio.
4 decades ago this spring, in May 1970, public anger against the war in Vietnam had reached a boiling point. Ohio's Kent State wasn't the most radical of universities, but a tragic turn of events on this campus would test the limits of dissent in American democracy and show how public outrage could help end a war.
Kent is calm. 40 years ago, there was an eruption of protest and vandalism after a stunning announcement by the American president, Richard Nixon.
Tonight, American and South Vietnamese units will attack the headquarters for the entire communist military operation in South Vietnam.
He was going to pursue the North Vietnamese enemy from Vietnam into Cambodia. After confrontations between the local police and students, the Ohio governor sent in soldiers under his command, the National Guard, and the stage was set.
Universities, I think throughout the world, strive for a marketplace of ideas, and that marketplace was shut down on May 4th, 1970.
Kent State professor Laura Davis teaches a class about the events on campus 4 decades ago.
He was so affected by her tragedy in particular.
She herself survived them as a student.
Nixon had said when he was elected in '68 that he had a secret plan to end the war. And then in the year prior to May 4th, he unveiled his plan. He had a plan of Vietnamization. He was going to gradually draw down the troops in Vietnam and then train the South Vietnamese army and turn over the war effort to the South Vietnamese.
So Nixon's Cambodia announcement came as a slap in the face.
That was really Nixon, I think, daring our generation to finally take a stand to stop the war, and we did that. Here in Kent, Ohio, and across the country, we began to protest more vigorously.
The anti-war protests grew as parents and children understood each other less and less in a growing generation gap.
You know, the difference in the values of the two generations. You know, the parents' generation, they were a generation that believed that children were to be obedient. And children, you know, were in this culture, their own culture, where the value was to question everything, to figure out your own values.
And it was a time of great cultural change. A lot of people started letting their hair grow long, experimenting with maybe marijuana and listening to a lot of rock music and questioning authority, questioning our parents and the older generation.
And questioning the war.
On campus, they're setting fire to the buildings.
After Nixon's Cambodia announcement, students burned the officer training building on the Kent campus, a hated symbol for the many young men who could be forced to fight.
The driving force of the anti-war movement in the Vietnam era was the draft. And in those days, everybody was eligible and had to deal with the draft. And of course, by that I mean men. And of course, then that affected sisters and mothers and whole families.
The governor of Ohio came to Kent and talked tough, very tough.
We are going to eradicate the problem. We're not going to treat the symptoms. And these people just move from one campus to the other and terrorize the community. They're worse than the brown shirts and the communist element and also the night riders and the vigilantes. They're the worst type of people that we harbor in America. And I want to say that they're not going to take over a campus.
It was the National Guard that was going to take over the Kent State campus. The governor's soldiers imposed a curfew. They flew helicopters over the university and even bayoneted a few unruly students. By Monday, the students were angry at more than the war. They wanted to protest against the presence of soldiers in their place of learning.
Students were very aware of that they were practicing their right to assembly and freedom of speech.
Alan Canfora was one of them.
What is this place?
This is where the May 4th rally started at 12 o'clock noon in 1970. Students were ringing this bell. And this was gathering a large crowd. This was a traditional area where people would gather for rallies back at that time against the war.
Jeffrey Miller was another.
Jeffrey was a very peaceful young man. He was a poet. He wrote anti-war poetry while he was in high school. He was very much against the war in Vietnam.
His mother remembers their last phone call right before the demonstration.
I said, do you think that's going to do any good? He says, I don't know. He said, but I feel, sometimes you just have to do these things. And he said, don't worry about it. He said, I might get arrested, but I'm not going to get my head broken.
A soldier's bullet would put Dean Kaler in a wheelchair for life. But he, too, didn't feel threatened that day.
I went to, like I said, watch what was happening because I'd never seen an anti-war demonstration. 2, lend my voice to opposition to the invasion of Cambodia. And 3, to find out what was the timeline here, what was the schedule, how long were the National Guard going to be on campus.
But the leaders of the National Guard were on edge.
What I seen missing was the lack of any real positive control by the leaders of the demonstrators. And I recognized that immediately as a dangerous omen.
The soldiers decided to disperse the students.
This really amused the crowd and created a situation where they started jeering and cheering the National Guard, chanting anti-war slogans at them, telling them, pigs off campus and all the other ones that went along with it. And they went back, and the National Guard did, and the campus police. You could see them putting on their gas masks and loading up their rifles and putting their bayonets on the end of them.
You have the guard against the students, but the students are essentially unarmed. Students are only armed with their voices. There were a few rocks being thrown, but it was mainly shouting and gesturing against soldiers.
They went back. You could see them then putting their tear gas canisters and their grenade launchers, and all of a sudden, bang, you hear all these pops and all these 8 or 10 tear gas canisters come flying through the air at us.
Some of the soldiers would later say they felt confused.
There was constant yelling. Sometimes they'd throw things. And then talking among themselves and people trying to lead them in some way to do something. I don't know what it was.
Most Kent State students didn't live on campus and so had nowhere to go between classes. But the soldiers still tried to drive them away. John Philo was a student photographer at the time who won a Pulitzer Prize for his work that day. He shot this David and Goliath scene.
This is the lone student against this army, literally an army. And there was a rifle on.
All right, so you get the point. I probably let it play more than 5 minutes because they just talked a lot. And for just to let you know, I'm very against arson. I did not know that the students decided to burn down the building, but they pretty much confirmed that it was an empty building at the time and no one got hurt. Because like I would understand if someone fucking died in the fire, and it pissed people off. But regardless, you're supposed to have a system that's supposed to know better than common college students, even if they did burn a building down in protest of the war. Regardless, a burning building is nothing worse than compared to what was happening towards Vietnam. We had no fucking point of going to Vietnam. We were invading someone's country just for the hell of it. But the real question I'm gonna ask anti-gun activists and pro-gun activists in the civilized manner that's rational and has nothing to do with what your gut feeling tells you, and regardless if you don't care if it doesn't match with what you feel, that has nothing to do what these massacres are about. This massacre that happened 46 years ago and this massacre that happened last week in Orlando, what's the difference besides people dying? A man in Orlando decided to go kill 50 innocent people for whatever will or opinion he had. It was his own will. Regardless if he was not stable, he decided to willingly kill and end the people's life. No one forced him to do it. Okay? Even if he was hiding behind his God and his religious views. But the point is, that was the guy's choice. These soldiers, they can't make any decisions without anyone's order. And in order to follow it, regardless of its any morals, regardless if it's any reasoning or personal grudges against protesters, when a commander says, alright, fire, kill, most of the time, most of those soldiers turn off their mind. They turn off any type of remorse in their hearts, and they turn off any judgment whether they feel comfortable or not to shoot people. And to make this very serious, like extremely serious for people who decide to take sides and divide themselves against opposing views, both sides should automatically agree that what happened at Kent State is much worse than what happened at Orlando. Even though 50 people died or got injured in Orlando, that's a horrible tragedy. I'm not comparing deaths. The manner of what these situations were approached, Kent State was worse because it's supposed to represent a system that's more lenient towards, like, you know, to civilized people. These university students weren't fucking criminals, and they weren't posing real threats. They weren't fucking killing normal, you know, people at a club. They weren't shooting a girl at a venue concert. They were just protesting, opposing a culture, opposing an old world, which the old world did not fucking care or didn't want to understand, because they wanted their kids to just blindly be obedient to whatever shit the government does. So, before I end this video, can we fucking stop with banning assault rifles and adding more laws? You need to understand that whatever happened in Orlando was fucking horrible. There was no excuse for what happened over there, but there's no fucking excuse to say that people shouldn't be able to buy assault rifles. Because in this case, these people had assault rifles and fucking shot those university students. And they have much more worse weapons than assault rifles. So, even though I have nothing against the army, all it takes is one individual to turn an entire crowd of human beings to turn against peaceful and non-lethal human beings. Regardless of your opposing views, if I think it's bad for you guys to fucking belittle other people for opposing views, and this is worse, because just because they have an opposing view on a specific subject, they want to fucking kill the people that oppose them in a fucked up manner that wasn't intelligent at all. There was no... I'm saying that an unstable mind is fucked up, right? For what happened at the Orlando massacre. Well, a stable mind that just blindly chooses to ignore the consciousness is fucking much worse. So if you decide to ignore whatever like rational thoughts just for your own personal feelings, you're much worse than those people that shot the university kids. Because it means you'll just blindly go with your gut feeling because you don't care if it's rational or not. You just don't like assault rifles. You don't like people with weapons. Well, I don't like anyone with weapons. Yet, one half of the Earth populations has weapons, and it's not only criminals. It's government officials. And just because they're government officials, it doesn't remove the fact that they're fucking human. They're flawed, just like unstable, fucked up people in this world. Regardless if you're working for an organization, regardless if you're not working for an organization, human beings are flawed. And to tell people and to have the audacity to mock them for wanting to have a more powerful weapon like an assault rifle compared to an army and criminals that have infinite amount of weapons that can fuck you up if you're a university student. What are the odds of you surviving against a government that decides to turn rogue at any moment? Very little. So I'm sorry that these people had to die in Orlando. I'm sorry if you lost someone, anything close to those incidents. But that's not going to change the fact that human beings are still flawed, and this system doesn't work for everybody else. So we need to stop fighting amongst each other and ask ourselves, what the fuck are we doing in this world that it's so bad that people can lose their shit for whatever reason, and if this system is benefiting everyone as a whole. Alright, so take care, guys. I hope you have a nice day. Sorry I got a little bit intense in the end. Just this is like an intense subject. So please, people who are anti-guns, stop being dicks. People who are pro-guns, be more compassionate. Don't be an asshole, because not everyone's comfortable with having a gun, and people who have guns shouldn't be seen as criminals either. It's the human mind that's the real issue. You can't put a law, or you can't put a mental test on people, because regardless if they've been sick their whole life, and regardless if they've been stable, they can turn it off at any moment to kill someone, regardless of what reason. So I'm gonna end it here, and I'll think about it. Until next time.